Throughout time, people across the world told each other tales of how they came to be, of heroes and monsters, romance and tragedy, death and rebirth. Mythology helped shape the ancient world, explaining the unexplainable. This is Mythology Unleashed. In modern times, scientific advancements have been able to answer questions that for centuries seemed unanswerable. From subjects such as biology and meteorology to psychology and sociology, it seems that with each passing year there is more uncovered and made available to the world. In the ancient times, such science was non-existent, yet the yearning for knowledge and enlightenment was as powerful as it is today. Mankind offered its own solutions. From these relatively primitive answers sprang forth stories passed down from generation to generation. These stories collectively are referred to as mythology. Every culture from around the world, from the Greeks and Romans to Native Americans to Australian Aborigines to the cultures of the Near and Far East, had its very own collection of myths. Many of these myths focus on similar themes and subject matters, many attempting to explain unexplained phenomena, how the world was created, of the supernatural forces that control the world, of the powers of love and war and greed and courage, terrible monsters and the heroes that battle them, tales of innocence and corruption, and of what happens after death. To peoples of the ancient world, such stories would be seen as truths. These stories helped to shape the very lives of these cultures, creating belief systems that rooted themselves into every aspect of everyday life. From the hunter-gatherer tribes of the Polynesian Islands to the upper and lower kingdoms of Egypt, traditions and customs were followed to the letter, out of fear of angering gods and spirits. In Mesopotamia, Hammurabi's code of law emphasized the eye for an eye principle, as he believed the gods Shamash, Anu, and Bel governed the world as such. In ancient Greece, stories of Charon, the greedy ferryman of the river Styx, led to the tradition of the dead being cremated or buried with coins. Without such, the deceased souls would never be allowed to enter the gates of Hades. Various Native American tribes would pray to spirits to aid them in their hunts or their harvests. The book of Exodus in the Bible tells of Moses relaying the Ten Commandments on the slopes of Mount Sinai, thus becoming a cornerstone of Abrahamic faiths. The Mayan, Aztec, and Incan cultures practiced human sacrifice, as stories circulated of their gods demanding human flesh and blood to survive. The examples are nigh endless, and these are but a few. As time would go on, and humanity would learn new truths about the world and about themselves, these early stories were regarded simply as myths. Old stories, nothing more. But with enlightenment also comes new questions, new hypotheses to attempt to answer them. Perhaps not on the scale of how the world came to be or how the weather changes, but stories closer to home would evolve. In the 1800s, a scientific and industrial renaissance took place with steam, gas, and even electricity beginning to power the world. And people began to wonder if there was anything humanity could not do. Fly through the air, walk on water, perhaps even bring people back from the dead? In 1819, Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, a story about an ambitious yet morally ambiguous scientist who animated a being composed of pieces of dead bodies. His creation turns out to be hideous, and he abandons the creature, leaving it alone to be subjected to the world's cruelty and transforming it into a being of wrath. Mary Shelley's story of Frankenstein and his monster asked the question of whether it is possible or even right to bring a person back to life after death. It then proceeds to answer said question in the form of a narrative. This makes it not too different from the myths and legends of the ancient world, which likewise address a question in the form of a story. And so as humanity endures, so too do the power of myths. While stories of the past can be debunked as mere fantasy thanks to scientific achievements and social breakthrough, new questions in response to enlightenment will emerge. Those questions, if they cannot yet be answered scientifically accurately, can and will be answered in the form of fictional narratives. And should these narratives have an impact on human society, whether great or minor, they too become modern myths.